Auspicious greeting. Welcome back to the core teaching class. Last class, we talked about the process of learning Buddhism, which is to listen, to contemplate, to practice, and to realize. So from today's class onward, I do hope that you would try to contemplate and then try to apply the Dharma in your daily life. Of course, after listening to this class. And before we begin, I will first like to ask you to let go. You might be thinking, what do you want me to let go of? Let go of all the view, concepts, and idea that you have. Open up your mind and prepare yourself to absorb and learn new concepts and teachings. If you do have any questions in regard to any of the material presented today or in any of the classes, please remember you can always post the questions onto the post in the Google Classroom or ask your questions in the Q&A session. I'll be posting about the date and time for the Q&A sessions in the Google Classroom as well. Once, the Buddha and his disciples sat under a tree, and then the Buddha picked up a handful of leaves, and he asked the disciple, "Look, is there more leaves on my hand, or is there more leaves on the trees?" And of course, the disciple said, "There are more leaves on the trees, of course." And the Buddha said, "All the teachings that I have taught are like the leaves on my hand. The Dharma that I have not shared are like the ones on the trees." In the same way, monks, those things that I have known with direct knowledge, but have not taught are far more numerous than what I have taught. And why haven't I taught them? Because they're not connected with the goal, do not relate to the rudiments of the holy life, and do not lead to disenchantment, to dispassion, to cessation, to calm, to direct knowledge, to self-awakening, to unbinding. That is why I have not taught them. And what have I taught? This is stress. This is the originations of stress. This is the cessation of stress. This is the path to practice leading to the cessation of stress. This is what I have taught. And why have I taught these things? Because they're connected with the goal, relate to the rudiments of the holy life, and leads to disenchantment, to dispassion, to cessation, to calm, to direct knowledge, to self-awakening, and to unbinding. This is why I have taught them. All the teachings that the Buddha taught are the core teachings that will help us to attain enlightenment and to be free from sufferings. However, we see that in some of the sutras, we do notice that it's not always the Buddha who taught the Dharma. It might be a disciple or it might be a practitioner. And of course, since the Buddha time until now, various great Buddhist masters had taught the Dharma according to what they interpret and also according to the audience they face. And of course, nowadays, if you go onto YouTube, we'll find many Buddhist classes or lectures taught by venerables or lay practitioners. How then can we determine whether it is the Dharma or not? As there are some teachings that do seem like the Dharma, but they are actually not. So, to help us determine if it's in accordance to the Dharma, the Buddha taught us about the 3 Dharma seals. As we know, a seal is something that we use to show that what's in the text or the document is authentic. Thus, from the terminology itself, we can see that to see whether this teaching is in accordance to the Dharma, there are 3 aspects that should be met. If it matches with these 3 Dharma, then it is in accordance to what the Buddha taught. The 3 Dharma seals are also important teachings that we need to realize in order for us to work through from the 12th link of dependent origination. So if you're unfamiliar with that term, please go to our Fogwang Hub website. At the upper top corner, you would see the 2021 Spring Course Review. You can go back to the core teaching course in spring semester to review the class on dependent originations and the 12 link of dependent originations, so which is class 4 to class 6. So you can learn more about it. And so back to our class. In another word, the teachings from the three Dharma seals help us view the world with clarity and to see the world as it is, so that we don't create more sufferings for ourselves due to our ignorance. So what are the three Dharma seals? And they are the following. All phenomena are impermanence. And second, everything is without self or lack inherent existence. Or we can also say everything is not self. Third, nirvana is perfect tranquilities. Now, let us examine what each of these Dharma seals is. All phenomena are impermanence. To understand this, we need to first look at the word phenomena. Phenomena basically refer to everything in the universe, ranging from the whole universe to the mountain, to our body, to our thoughts and feelings. Impermanence means it is changing all the time. So to rephrase it, we can also say everything is changing all the time. Of course, it then begs the question of why is everything changing all the time? From the Buddhist perspective, everything arises from causes and conditions, just like a tree growing from a seed. For the seed to grow, it does require a lot of necessary conditions like the water, the sunlight, the soil, air, and so forth. Without all of these conditions, the seed would not grow. Or if we look at ourselves, we can't grow from a baby to who we are today without the support and guidance from numerous people and various necessities. We have parent and family to nurture us with guidance and basic needs, of course, like our 3 meals, clothing, books, computer, taking care of us, and so on. And we do have teachers and mentors to guide us and teach us knowledge. We have friends and various people supporting us in our life and in our work. Without any of these conditions or support, we may not become who we are today and may have led a very different life. The Buddha said that all component thing or conditioned phenomena are subject to change. They will arise and come to be, but they will also disappear. So things are dynamic. As Heraclitus, the Greek philosopher, said, there's nothing permanent except change. And of course, modern scientists also observe this to be true. Buddha always encouraged his disciples to contemplate the teachings and observe for themselves to see if they're true or not. So now let us do some contemplation and observation. And of course, after this class, you can also do the same contemplation and observation for yourself. You can take it as a daily practice. Let us first observe the universe. The stars seems like they're the same throughout our life. However, they do change. Just like Abraham Loeb, the chair of the astronomy department of Harvard University, once wrote, the only thing that remains constant is change. What's true for our lives is also true for the universe. In the magazine Scientific America, he said that astronomers quickly realized that not only the universe and its galaxy, but also the stars in them must have been born and eventually will die. For those of us who like to go for stargazing or night sky watching, we can see changing of moon phase, eclipse, meteor showers, or comets passing through our skies. All these events indicate changes in the universe. And we also see evolutionary change. A very good example is the evolution of the famous pepper moth in Britain. Before the Industrial Revolution, the pepper moth were gray in color so that it actually camouflaged very well on the tree trunk. However, after the Industrial Revolution, the gray pepper moth slowly died off because it became an easy prey for the bird when it rests on the tree trunk, which were dark in color due to the pollution from the factories. At the time, the black pepper moth, which had a DNA mutation that make their wings black, start to rise in number because they now camouflage well on the dark tree trunk. From this evolution studies, we can see that as condition in our surrounding change, it would affect the relative outcomes as well. In this case, increase in pollution from surrounding factories darkened the color of the tree trunk, and this in turn affect the survival rate of the great and black pepper moth. Now, if we zoom back to our life, we can see the changes in season, from spring to summer to autumn and to winter, and of course it go back to spring and the cycle continue. We see major changes in our life during this COVID-19 pandemics. Lots of people become sick, but they also recovered, although maybe they still feel weak in the body. And of course, there's also a lot of people who died from the virus. Our life also changed. We need to wear masks to go indoor in the public. We relied more on technology for online meetings and remote workings. Some college courses now become a hybrid of remote classes and in-person classes. If we observe the temple now offered online Dharma service and of course online Buddhism classes and lectures. And of course, Fo Guang Hub is the result of this change as well. And now let us observe the changes in our body. Through our body change, we definitely see changes in our body. This is how we grow from a baby to a child, to a teenager, and to an adult, and ultimately to an old person. If we observe babies, we can definitely see changes in them almost every single day. They look a bit different. We see how our hairs and nails grow. We see how wrinkles start to develop on our skin as we age. We might get sick from flu and of course recovered from it. As science told us, our body cells died and are replaced by new ones. This is why we can donate blood every 56 days. Not only our physical body change, our feelings and view change as well. Now let us look at this video. It's a dialogue between an old man and a boy. Watch video.
What?
Oh, you have yours. What's that? Okay.
I don't know where the questions. I don't know where the song is.
Well, will I ask you a question,
Okay.
the first one? Right. What is the worst thing about being young?
Well, you get lots of homework. It's also pretty. They're like in the middle, like in school, like in the middle of bad and good.
Oh,
What is the worst thing about being old?
not being able to do things that you could do when you were young.
You can't bend down and get stuff on the floor.
Well, I can still do that, but the problem is your body gets a bit stiff.
I know it hurts a lot when you try
Yeah.
to get down when you are
That's
old.
right, yes. You might get sick more often. Hopefully
Yeah.
I don't, but that's the
Yeah,
problem.
that's pretty bad.
It is pretty bad.
The only time I went to a hospital is my mom to get me born.
Oh, yeah. Do you wish you were old?
Maybe so I was old and so I can buy stuff for my own and have be married, but that'll be you. Do you wish you were young? Why?
Well, the problem about, the great thing about being young is you have more time. You've more time to do things. I could play games, which I did. I used to play cowboys and Indians.
Yeah, that's what I play.
Do you?
Yeah.
That's what I like about being young. I could use my imagination more.
That's a sad story. You can't do that anymore.
Well, I could be an older cowboy. I might do it yet. Will you fall in love? And what will it be like?
I don't know. Like, we'll have babies, it will be like fun. I'll like have to change. Even though I'll have to change his diaper, it'll be fun.
Ah,
But what about if he cries?
well.
I'll just sing like Ed Sheeran to him, like.
And who do you love now? Who do you love now?
My mom.
Your mom? Your dad?
Yeah, I like my family. Did you fall in love? What was it like?
Yes, it was different for me. I fell in love late.
And did you get married?
No, unfortunately, my partner, she passed away. She died, unfortunately. That was a sad thing. Yeah, she got sick.
I'm gonna cry.
No, don't. No. No. These things happen, Sean. That's life. But I have very good memories. Very good memories. And you live, a lot of the time you live in your head with memories. You can remember all the good things, and that's the important thing. Well, the advice I would give to you, Sean, is you don't have to be rich to be happy. Do the things you like doing that make you feel good. Because when you're happy yourself, everybody else is happy.
Hey, Sean, do you have advice for Des?
To like act normal. Don't be silly. Don't bully lots of people. The people I know in school, like my friend Alex in school, whenever he gets hurt, I hug him. I might not be able to work, but...
Oh, that's a good advice. And be yourself. Don't let other people tell you what you should be. Just be as you are. Isn't that true?
Yeah.
And I'm sure your life is going to be very successful. You have all the right things. You have all the right things to do. All your good friends. And keep those friends going. And keep life going. Oops. There you go.
From their answer to the same questions, we can see that as we age, our view and perceptions of things change based on our experience and the changes in the conditions around us. This is the same with our feelings. Suppose you're to meet a good friend that you haven't seen for years, and you happily drive toward the restaurant. As you stop in front of a traffic light, a car behind you hit the back of your car. How would you feel at the moment? If this happened to us, we probably feel frustrated and angry. The happy mood is ruined. However, where is this frustration and anger before your car was hit? Our feelings and emotions change from moment to moment, depending on the external conditions that we encounter. Therefore, don't hold on to them too tight. These feelings, especially the negative one, are not who we are. They don't define us. After the contemplation on impermanence, some people might then develop fear that they will lose their current happiness, such as what if there's a change in our job, what if we get laid off, or what if there's a change in our relationship with our loved one, or encounter misfortune, or maybe someone stole our possession. What about all these changes, right? So of course, all these might happen because change is the realities of life. However, it might also mean that we can always improve and be a better self. Even if we are at the bottom of our life, impermanence means that there's always hope. and that there will always be new opportunities. As Albert Einstein said, in the midst of every crisis lies great opportunities. And former President John F. Kennedy once said, when written in Chinese, the word crisis is composed of two characters. One represents dangers and the other represents opportunities. Therefore, we should not be too quick to make a judgment. It may not be good, but it may not be bad either. We should first learn to accept and embrace change. Second seal. So the second Dharma seal is everything is not self. To understand this teaching properly, the first thing we need to understand is that the Buddha was not answering the question of whether there is a self or not. This is very important. In one of the sutras, when someone asked the Buddha whether there is a self, the Buddha refused to answer. When later asked why, he said that to hold either that there is a self or there is no self is to fall into the extreme form of wrong view that make the path of Buddhist practice impossible. Therefore, the question should be put aside. Think about, if we said that there is no self, then we might start to ask questions like, well, if there's no self, then who is going on rebirth? Who is traveling in the samsara? If there is no self, then who's practicing on the spiritual path? We might end up circling around these questions and get sidetracked from the real purpose of the cultivation path, which is to end sufferings and to attain enlightenment. The most important thing to remember is that all the teachings that the Buddha taught is about sufferings and ending of sufferings. Remember that story about the Buddha holding a handful of leaves? This is exactly what he said. All that he taught, it's always about getting toward this goal, to unbinding, or I should say to nirvana. Our self-identification is causing our sufferings, which is why the Buddha told us about how everything is not self. The Buddha taught about how clinging to the self leads to sufferings in various sutras. So let us examine two of them. Okay. In one of the sutras, the Buddha said, one of the main manifestations of passion and desires for these aggregates is to view them as me or mine, creating a sense of self around them. There is the case where an uninstructed runs-of-the-mill person who has no regard for the Noble One is not well versed or disciplined in their Dharma, who has no regard for men of integrities, is not well versed or disciplined in their Dharma. Like this person assumes form to be the self, or the self as possessing form, or form as in the self, or the self as in form. He seized it with the idea that I'm form. The form here refers to our body, or form is mine. As he is seized it with these ideas, his form changes and alters, and he falls into sorrow, lamentation, pain, distress, and despairs over change and alteration. Similarly with feelings, perception, volitions, and consciousness. So for those of us who have not learned the Dharma, we tend to regard our body, feeling, perception, volitions, and consciousness, or what we call the five aggregate, as I, me, or mine. And of course, if you're unfamiliar with the term five aggregate, again, please go back to the Pho Quang Hub website to review that class on the five aggregate. We normally assume the five aggregate as this I. When there are changes to the five aggregate, we become very distressed and despaired. And now let us look at another sutras, and we'll see similar teachings. The activities of I-making and my-making are defiling because even though they aim at pleasure, they lead to stress. both because the act of clinging is stressful in and of itself, and because it tries to find a dependable happiness in things that are subject to change. Stressful and not totally under one's control. If form were self, this form would not lend itself to disease. It would be possible to say with regard to form, let my form be thus, let my form not be thus. But precisely because form is not self, this form lends itself to disease. And it is not possible to say with regard to form, let my form be thus, let my form not be thus. Similarly with the other aggregate. From the passage above, the Buddha told us that the self-identification leads to sufferings because we cling to the self. We didn't realize that the self, whether it is our body, feeling, perception, volitions, and consciousness, is changing all the time and they are not under our control. If we build and depend our happiness on things that are changing all the time and beyond our control, we will have distress, dissatisfaction, sorrow, and lamentation because we cannot direct it to the way that we want. Reading from the sutras, we can see that the Buddha taught about the concept of not self to guide us to view ourselves and the world with the right perspective, to really see them as they really are. When we talk about me or the self, we tend to perceive this assumed self in three incorrect ways. We tend to think that the self is permanent, the self is singular and independent, and that we have control of the self. Of course, we would not say that I'm permanent, but we basically think of ourselves as being something lasting and definitely not something that changes every single moment. Therefore, we would think that this is me today. I'm the same person as I was yesterday, the day before, last year, or 20 years ago. This also extends to the future. This can be seen when we say, I'll do this tomorrow. I'll retire in 10 years. I'll go travel around the world. This is like looking into a river. So if you look at the picture of the river, and if we go to this same river and look at it like many years after, the river seems like it's the same river, yet the water within is changing momentarily because the water is flowing onward. This is the same with the self. The first wrong perceptions of the self is due to our ignorance with respect to time, and that all phenomena, including ourselves, are changing every single moment. And the second wrong perception of I is that the self is singular and independent. When we talk about the self, we tend to think of it as one. We are one distinct person. However, if we look at ourselves, we'll find that the self is not singular, but composed of multiple components. We're composed of our body, our thoughts, our perceptions, our consciousness, and many more. If we examine our body, it is not a singular entity as well. Our body is composed of billions of cells. The mind has many thoughts and functions. Neither the body and the mind are singular. Also, the self is not independent. The self is composed of the body and mind, and both of which are needed for us to live. And the third wrong perception about the self is that we're in control. We might think that I have control of what I want to do, when I want to eat, and so on. Are we really in control? Can we ask our body not to grow sick or become old? Can we ask ourselves to instantly become happy while we're very depressed right now? The obvious answer is no. We cannot control our body from getting sick or growing old and ultimately die. We cannot control the thoughts and feelings from arising. These are the three main incorrect notions of self that we cling to. If we continue to contemplate and analyze them, we'll begin to see how we cling onto the self as permanent, as singular and in control, while it is actually changing momentarily and it has arisen from multiple causes and conditions. We will discover that our assumption of the self don't reflect the realities. Now that we understand more about the notions of I that we have, the next question we want to ask is, why do sufferings arise when we cling to this notion of self? When we start to cling to these notions of self, then there'll be you and there'll be others. So we start to have dualistic view and make distinction between things. We'll compare it with others. When we're in school, we might compare our grades with our friends and our classmates. If we do better than them, then we are happy. But if we do worse than them, then we might feel stressed out, or we'll feel sad or disappointed, or even jealousy. When we're at work, we might compare how our boss treat a colleague and us. If we work very hard and feel that the boss is treating others better than us, then we might be hurt and angry. A lot of afflictions arise due to comparing with others. When negative emotion arise, it might lead to conflicts with others or even hurting others through our speech and actions. Now let us look at the story between two men and a bag of donuts. Watch video.
So I'm at the airport and they've got this deal for 5 donuts for $5, which is an awesome deal because it's pretty much the same price as buying 3 donuts anyway, so it doesn't matter. And I set my stuff down and I pick up the paper and I start reading the paper, and this guy sits down across from me. And so I, look over the paper and he kind of gives me a bit of a smile and I give him a bit of a nod and I go back to reading the business section. A little while later, I hear this rustling on the table and I'm like, I look over and the guy has got his hand in the bag of donuts. Okay, that's a bit weird, but it doesn't really matter. The guy looks like he's homeless. He probably needs it more than I do. And I've still got 4 donuts anyways, and I'm not going to eat all 4 donuts, so what do I care? So I reach in the bag and I grab a donut and I start eating it. And I go back to reading the paper. So I'm just getting into the social pages and I hear this rustling on the table again. And I look over and the guy's got his hand in the bag of donuts again. He takes a bite and I'm like, what the crap? And now I'm getting a bit angry, but the precedent has been set and so I don't feel like I can say anything. But I reach into the bag a bit more aggressively, I take a bite, and I just shake my head like, whatever. So a few minutes have gone by and there's this call on the loudspeaker for the next departure, and the guy gets up and he starts gathering up all his stuff and he gets to the end of the table and he stops, and I see him out of the corner of my eye and he reaches into the bag and he pulls out the last donut, and I'm like, seriously? And he looks at me, he breaks it in 2 and he hands it to me. I reach out and I take this half and I'm in total disbelief, and he kind of nods at me and he walks off. So while I'm sitting here pondering the absurdity of what's just happened, I hear the call for my flight. And so I get up and I grab my bag and I grab my jacket, and under my jacket is my bag of donuts. Not only was I eating that guy's donuts the whole time and he didn't say anything, he took out his last donut and he broke it in half and gave it to me.
Why did that young man get angry? He became angry because he thinks that the other guy is eating his bag of donuts. Once he is stuck with these wrong perceptions, various negative emotions arise because his donuts were taken. How often does this happen to us? We become angry when people take our things without asking, or get frustrated when someone accidentally breaks our things, or when people dump their trash on our lawn. If we really examine the cause behind these negative emotions, it all arises from clinging to this me and mine. This is the same with clinging to my view, my desires, my perceptions, and so on. When we cling strongly to our view, it might lead to conflict when we work with other people, because we will tend to think that our view is correct and theirs is wrong, so they should follow us. And sometimes it will lead to racism. It might even lead to war, just like the Holocaust that happened in World War II. The teachings of not self is to help us to shed sufferings through letting go of its cause and lead us to the ultimate happiness. It is about helping us to break our habit of constructing this assumed self, which then leads to afflictions and sufferings in life. It is also about viewing who we are in the right perspective. If we continue to cling to this notion of self, this is like living in a dream. In a dream, we feel that things are real. What we feel are real, and we believe them to be real. When we feel hurt, we really do feel the pain. Only when we wake up could we realize that it's all a dream. It's a delusion that we create in our mind. Clinging to the self is like living in a dream. And the Buddha taught us about not self to help us to wake up from this dream and see the realities as it is. When we understand about not self, we won't have as much afflictions and won't feel double the pain. We can break through. The latest neuroscience-based collaborative research on third-person self-talk indicates that if a person talks to himself or herself in the third person by using non-first-person pronouns or his or her own name during the time of distress or when he or she is reminiscing about painful experience from his or her past, it can help that person in facilitating his or her emotion and to stay calm and collected without much additional cognitive effort. This also accords with what the Buddha told us about not self. If we think about it, when we think, I'm sad, there's no more hope for me, we will become stuck in this sense of sadness and hopelessness. The more that we think about it, the more painful and hopeless we feel, as we believe that the feeling is me. If we view the occurrence from a third-person stand, we won't be as affected by the incidents, and the feeling that arises won't be as strong. There would still be the unpleasant feelings that we felt at the moment. However, we won't hurt ourselves again by thinking, I feel this, I'm in pain, and I'm really in pain. When we start to understand about the notions of not self, we'll know that our body, feeling, perception, volitions, and consciousness are not me. They're changing all the time. Thus, if I'm feeling hurt and sad due to a layoff or some misfortune, I'll know that these feelings are not me. They will come to pass. Also, we will learn to follow the changes in the conditions and be flexible when facing these changes. This is like a fist and an open hand. When we cling to this notion of self, this is like the clenched fist. As our hand is folded in a fist, we're not flexible and we can't do anything with it. If we clench very hard, we might even hurt ourselves. However, if we open up our hand, it is free to hold things and do various things with it. When we understand about not self, we will be able to follow the external conditions with ease and peace. We will be able to work well with others as we would listen to others and accept their ideas. Also, we can press our limit and excel. We have the potentials to do more than we think we can. It then begs the question of, how should we contemplate and analyze about not self so that we can slowly view ourselves as such? Before analyzing about not self, we should remember that we currently have the wrong perceptions that this self is permanent, it's singular, and we're in control. Also, the Buddha told us that we considered the 5 aggregate, the body, feeling, perceptions, volitions, and consciousness as I, or as the self. Now, we can analyze to see for ourselves to see if each of the aggregate is permanent, singular, or in control, as we assume. So now let us look at the contemplations of the body. Let us look at our body. We can first ask ourselves, is my body permanent? Of course not. We have grown from a baby to a child and to who we are today. If it's permanent, we probably will not grow and will be a baby forever. Or actually, I should say, we'll be a cell forever in the mother's womb. And of course, my body is changing all the time. I become thin if I go on a diet, and I become chubby if I eat a lot. I see that my hair and nails grow long. My cells are growing and dying all the time. Is my body one single entity? Definitely not. My body is composed of billions of cells. And if you look at the pictures there, the cells in terms form the many organs in my body. So can I control my body? I cannot. I cannot control my body from getting old so that I'm 20s forever. I cannot control it not to get sick. Otherwise, there won't be so much fear about catching the COVID-19, right, during the pandemic. Therefore, where is this assumed self? This body is a dynamic conditioned form that supports us. The Buddha told us that this body or this form is like a globe of foam in the river. Globe of foam is formed when the wind blows at the water. It seems to have a form, but it's only a conventional or a professional existence. Just like the globe of foam, our body too is a professional existence. Now, let us contemplate on feelings. Our feelings is changing all the time. We might be happy one moment and become angry the next moment when you see someone that you don't like. There are times when we're sad, but after talking it through with a friend, then we're fine again. Our feelings about things are not permanent. It changes according to what or who we encounter. We may feel nervous looking at a boss' stern and serious face, but become happy the next moment when the boss compliments us in the meeting. Feeling is not permanent. It arises when our sixth sense organ, like our eyes, ear, nose, tongue, body, and mind, interact with their sense object. Also, we can't control our feelings when it arises. Whenever there's a contact, feelings would arise. Or think about this. When you're feeling very nervous for a presentation, can you ask yourself to stop feeling nervous, be calm right now? Probably not. Maybe you feel better after taking a few deep breaths, but you still feel a bit nervous. The Buddha told us that feeling is like a bubble. Bubble moves when the wind blows at it. It appeared one moment and it might disappear the next moment. Feeling is like the bubble. It arises and it disappears, changing all the time. Now let us contemplate upon perceptions. Perception is the labeling of things. Perceptions also changes all the time, just like perception on beauty. If we look into a closet and look at all the jeans that we own, we'll realize that our perception of what was considered cool-looking jeans change as time goes. When we're young, we might probably find that the designer's jeans, such as Calvin Klein or acid-washed denim jeans, were the coolest pants. In the 90s, we found that the thuggery or big and baggy jeans were the newest trend. Then in 2000, we found that the ultra low rise genes are the genes to have. And we moved to the skinny genes in 2010. And now we just select one that's crop and comfortable. So our perception are changing all the time based on our experience, based on what we learn from others, based on what we get from our culture and from what we see in the media and probably in the societies and so on. Perceptions arise from causes and conditions, and just like all these conditions that I have mentioned just now. The Buddha told us that perceptions is like a mirage. If we observe closely and examine it, we'll realize that it is emptied of substance. We see a mirage and it seems real, but it's not. Perception is the same. So now let us contemplate on volitions. Our volitions or our intention also changes based on causes and conditions. We all make mistakes. However, we can change our intentions from a bad one to a good one. There are lots of stories about how people turn around their life despite of making a mistake before. Former hacker Kevin Mitnick was on the FBI's most wanted list before launching his own security firm. When Kevin was 16, he hacked the computer system Digital Equipment Corporation and stole their software. He was a fugitive for nearly 3 years before being arrested in 1995 and released in 2002, after which he found a new company, Mitnick Security, to help other companies discover security lapses in their systems. As we see from Kevin Mitnick's stories, our intentions of doing things or seeing things are not permanent. Doing wrong once doesn't mean you'll do so forever. If we're mindful, we can change our bad intention, which might be arising due to our bad habit or from our greed, anger, and ignorance, to a good one. The Buddha told us that volitions is like the planting tree. If we want to find the hardwood of a planting tree, we'll realize that it's emptied inside after we peel all the layers of the tree trunk. Volitions is like a planting tree, which is not as strong as it seems. And finally, contemplation on consciousness. Consciousness arises from the sense organ come in contact with their objects. For example, our eyes are watching this class video right now. So as our eyes see the video, eye consciousness arises. Of course, this is the same for the other 5 consciousness. As our sense organ are receiving information from the surrounding moments to moment, the associate consciousness are also changing all the time. Like they arise and then they disappear, they arise and disappear. As you're listening to what I'm saying right now, which changes every single moment, thus the air consciousness that arises must be different every single moment. It's sort of like beads of water dropping one after another. Just like when you open up the tab and water pour out, the column of water that you see pouring out are composed of immeasurable droplets of water. Our consciousness are the same. We're not in control of it. Just like we cannot tell ourselves not to have dreams at night. The Buddha told us that consciousness is like the magic performed by the magician. The magic is an optical illusion that seems real, but it's not. The consciousness are the same as the magic. It's not as real as we think it is. If we can observe the 5 aggregate as impermanent and that they are not self, the Buddha said, "Seeing thus, the well-instructed disciple of the Noble One grows disenchanted with form, disenchanted with feelings, disenchanted with perception, disenchanted with fabrication," which also refer to volitions, disenchanted with consciousness, disenchanted, he grows dispassionate. Through dispassion, he's released. With release, there is the knowledge. release. He discerned that birth is ended, the holy life fulfilled, the task done, there is nothing further for this world. It is very hard to change our perceptions on this assumed self in just one day. We can start with contemplating about the impermanence of life. Then we can move on to contemplate and analyze how the five aggregate are not self. Gradually, through our experience and practice, we will one day realize that the five aggregate are indeed not self. And of course, this actually leads to the third seal, which is nirvana is perfect tranquility. The release that the Buddha mentioned in the passage that we have just read just now, it's actually referring to nirvana. Nirvana is a state in which all afflictions like greed, anger, ignorance, arrogance, and thoughts are eliminated. It is a state of non-arising and non-ceasing. The calm and unmoving state of nirvana is not the end of existing life, but the beginning of a new one. The state of nirvana has no birth and no death. Rather, it is the state of a perfect eternal life that transcends all times, space, and the cycle of samsara. When nirvana is attained, a person is liberated and at ease. Nirvana is life at its ultimate and most perfect state. So to conclude, the three Dharma seals, which are all phenomena are impermanence, everything is not self, and nirvana is perfect tranquility, can help us determine if we are studying or reading whether this material is in accordance to the Dharma or not. Also, through contemplating and applying the three Dharma seals in life, we can break through from the sufferings in our life by helping us to see ourselves and the world as it really is in its realities. And last, I do strongly encourage everyone to do some contemplation about impermanence and not self every day. If you persist, you'll find that you can let go of your negative thoughts, feelings, and attachment easier than before, and ultimately, you won't even cling to them. And last but not least, thank you very much for listening to this class. Please take care and stay safe. 弥陀佛。